All right, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, so we're gonna come lift that energy back up. I know it's post lunch, and that delicious meal is sort of sitting in everybody's stomach. But we do have a really interesting panel and an exciting topic, and we're actually gonna kind of come out of the case study phase, kind of lift up a level, and we're gonna talk a little bit about coastal resiliency in the sense of how the ways in which we can bring the ocean enterprise to bear on coastal resiliency today. And our expert panel will have a number of different ways to kind of think through that and offer us some perspective, and as well as really, as we get to a higher level, addressing what are the challenges that are sort of in front of us right now that we have to deal with as we bring the ocean enterprise to bear, as we begin to apply new forms of innovation to these challenges, but also looking for additional solutions on the commerce side. So I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation. I'm going to ask each of our distinguished panelists to reintroduce themselves, and Tamara, you're here as well. She's new. You haven't seen her this morning. So I'll start with you, Dean Thomas, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Thomas. I'm the Dean of the College of Marine Sciences and Maritime Studies at Texas A&M University. And just so thrilled to be here. Thank you for convening the panel.
Great.
So hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Kahn Zissman, new face, but it's really my honor to be here on this panel. I work with Seaworthy Collective. We're a 501c3 nonprofit out of Miami, and really I have a more technical background. I got here studying geology and geophysics, and then I worked in the I worked in the energy industry for a long time doing exploration at sea. So I've worked in almost every ocean and seen a lot of coastlines, and that kind of seeing what I saw compelled me to pivot my career into climate. And I found myself working in the Blue Tech cluster in San Diego, which taught me a lot about the business side of things and the entrepreneurial side of things. And that ultimately led me to where I am today, which is having the privilege to work with entrepreneurs, the people bringing the next wave of solutions for our coasts and communities and planet. And I spend my days empowering those founders and really trying to de-risk their startups and make their dreams come true. So,
Great, thank you so much.
Hello again, everyone. Katherine O'Fallon. I am the Executive Director for the Marine Research Hub, which is based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Broward County. So that's why I spoke about Broward County earlier. And we are a nonprofit also in the space, really connecting the dots to build the blue economy by elevating nature-based and research-based solutions for commercialization so that we can create jobs, build business, but ultimately take care of our greatest asset, which is our marine and coastal environments. And working with companies like Seaworthy, Ocean Exchange, supporting accelerators and incubators, and working with the universities to really drive that innovation so that we can deploy it at a quicker speed to solve some of our greatest challenges, but create businesses in that space as well.
Yeah, and I think so you can see here the through line, which is between Debbie's work in terms of really bringing up the next generation of our marine workforce, educating that workforce for these opportunities, working with entrepreneurs, and then building out activation and engagement through hubs and accelerators, and the power of really bringing to bear sort of group thinking, but also business expertise, guidance, counsel, is really changing the face of how we do coastal resiliency. You know, it's not just locked up in academia, it's a thriving ecosystem. So that being said, with those changes, I'm going to ask each one of you to maybe provide us with your interpretation of a definition of what coastal resiliency is now. And this is such an interesting question because usually when you ask a question like this, you just get a lot of different answers. So would love to hear you start, Debbie.
Yeah, that one's fun. And I think one's definition or perspective on coastal resiliency is absolutely nuanced and contextualized by the environment we're in. On Galveston Island, coastal resiliency is recovery from storms and compound flooding, right? And that's fraught with some differences in social impacts as well. But also understanding that there's the resilience of infrastructure, there's the resilience of communities, there's the resilience of response, and also there's the concern about, well, what does the next one look like? And so there's.
I really appreciate that, this sort of kind of multi-impact interpretation. Tamara?
So I'll just add on that from our perspective at Seaworthy, it's not just the response to storms and protecting, of course, the infrastructure and the communities, but there's sort of that crisis part, and then there's a slower things like that are eroding beaches and maybe salt intrusion and things that are they're quiet and slow crises, but they're affecting our communities and our agriculture and everything we need. So we see it as there's a slew of things and then a $1 trillion market with opportunity as well.
Thank you. Katherine?
Yeah. Well, I'll add on to what everyone has already said a little bit. It is the innovation opportunity. I think that's where I've been a part of, if you were here earlier before lunch and heard about the Broward County coastal, the resilience plan and really the coastal opportunity, is that we're trying to connect and support and work with the counties and the municipalities to show that when you've identified where infrastructure is needed, well, now let's look at some opportunities for innovation in that space, because we are looking at the community infrastructure, but also the marine and ecosystem infrastructure as well, because for South Florida especially, tourism is one of our biggest driving industries, the marine industry as well. And so I think all of this is also just a perfect storm of opportunity, I think, when it comes to coastal resilience.
Yeah, right. You know what's coming. We know these conditions have changed in the oceans and the Gulf, and it's going to have all these different impacts. And so just shifting gears for a second here, Tamara, you have a podcast where you actually talk and kind of mine the minds who are thinking about these problems and trying to catalyze business ideas to serve the sort of supply chain, I guess, if you will, of coastal resiliency. What is it about that challenge, the challenge of coastal resiliency, that is attractive to the entrepreneur? And then this being EarthX and the Conference of Congresses is here. We've got different mindsets like investors. So as they're thinking about investors, what is that attraction to working on coastal resiliency problems that is good for business, is another way of putting it.
Great question. So I do talk to a lot of founders, and I think, there's the element of people want to solve problems, and they recognize there are big problems, and sometimes people get kind of honed in on little things that nobody else even knew about was a problem, but it affected them or their community, and they want to solve it. So it's a space rife for innovation, and things have been done. If you think about the Galveston seawall, it was built in 1902, and things haven't changed that much in seawalls since then.
Yeah.
So, and it did its job. It was a feat, and it did its job. So we now have all these kind of technologies and knowledge that we could be leveraging to improve on things. And I think a lot of innovators are excited to do that. There's kind of a nature-based approach, and people are recognizing, we talked earlier about coral reefs and building artificial coral reefs if we have to, to really help beef up resilience and seeing how much those help us. So there's again, so many things to tackle, and it's kind of a space that's exciting to be in and get ahead. And then from the investor side, because the scale of the problem and opportunity is so large, there's a lot of opportunity for ROI. And saying that, there's one other thing. maybe I'll just ask the audience, is anybody an investor in the room? Like, can you put your hand up if you're an investor?
In the back.
I see one. Okay. Keep your hand up if you also do philanthropy. All right. Good. If you put your hand down, you're missing out on some upside here because you could leverage philanthropy to offset capital gains and really de-risk future investments. And that's what we're doing at entrepreneur support organizations like Seaworthy and Ocean Exchange. You could leverage the philanthropy through us and be getting an upside to your investing. So if you go out there and talk to any of the investors that are here, spread that word for me.
That is an incredible strategy you just shared with us. Thank you. I think we're all going to make notes on. We're all taking notes on that.
Philanthropy with upside is what Daniel Kleinman, our founder, says.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you can see how the sort of the intersectionality, right? The cross section of coastal resiliency brings different opportunities from different sectors. Let's talk, Katherine, a little bit about the Marine Research Hub. So you gave us this brilliant, inspiring case study on Broward County. I think I turned to my colleague and I said, terrifying, but that's one part of your work, but at the Marine Research Hub, you are working also with a number of different companies and startups and different partners to do innovative work. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what the hub is? And then as I was doing my research on the hub, I saw that it was taking a solution-based approach. So also help us understand what that means.
So just a little back, the hub was really designed to elevate the research out of the lab. It came from the business members in our community who saw we're surrounded by these great oceanographic institutions doing great things, but where was it being deployed? Where was that research getting out into the field to actually do the good work that needs to be done? And so that's where the solution-based approach kind of comes in, is that these are research-based solutions, nature-based solution companies that can be creating really good businesses that are going to employ people and create high-paying jobs in a space of Florida, South Florida, anywhere that's coastal, that is going to need to protect and support the marine ecosystem, from coastal resilience to aquaculture to water quality and everything in between. But the goal of the hub is not to reinvent the wheel. I think that was said earlier, as far as we want to elevate the solutions, create collaboration across the stakeholders, from the academic institutions to the accelerators and incubators like Seaworthy and Ocean Exchange, and why we partner and support them, and into the investor side, to the government and policy for pilots and deployment. So it's really about connecting those dots so that things can get done more efficiently, more effectively, and really deploy this space to be the lead in the blue economy, so that it can go globally. It doesn't just have to be in Florida. It doesn't just have to be on the coast, but it can be internationally. And then workforce is such a huge part of all of that, and connecting with education as well. My background is education. I was 17 years in the public school system. Marine science was my passion, and then I fell into education, and I loved it, but I saw that gap in what I was telling my students, that there are these challenges, and you can solve them, but we hadn't given them the examples of these companies. They couldn't see themselves in it because they didn't have those companies in their backyard to kind of visualize themselves either being an entrepreneur themselves, working for a company like this, or even pursuing master's and PhD research for solutions like this. And so that's why I stepped into this role, and I haven't looked back. It's been super exciting. And so I get to partner and still do my education. I just get to educate a different audience, not middle schoolers anymore. But I'll tell you, if you can explain it to a middle schooler, you can explain it to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right, and everyone's pitch should be at the middle school level, right? So, I think you bring up a really, really important thing for us to consider here, which is these issues are going to grow. They're going to compound. Coastal resiliency is not just, as you put it, $1 trillion market. It's also a sector that needs workers. It needs a workforce. It needs people who need to be able to see themselves, not just as, like I did as a kid, a marine biologist exploring the ocean's depths, but also thinking about what does the ocean infrastructure look like, ocean engineering, and also I think we also saw, and think about Tom's work, and he shared about the Flood Hub, people who are working with data to solve these issues as well and making that available. So as I sort of turn to you, Debbie, you have to think about the pedagogy. What do young people need to learn? What are the skill sets that the ocean enterprise needs, and how do we prepare them for that? And then thinking about this challenge of coastal resiliency, clearly there are going to be opportunities for everyone to close some gaps, because it seems like this is a territory that is, it's not only is it ongoing and emerging and evolving, but as we see the rate of the risk increase dramatically, there's an urgency to to make sure we're educating the next generation. So I'm kind of wondering, how at your university are you defining that pedagogy, and what are you looking for in a future-proofed kind of marine workforce of the future?
Thank you. I've got a scaffolded response to that.
Okay.
And if I can, I'm going to start granular, because I want to pick up the thread of Millie's question to Tom, which is, are there examples or analogs of the Flood Hub in other states? And so our college hosts the Institute for Disaster Resilient Texas, which is very similar in that it's a state-funded line item that was created in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. And the mandate is pretty powerful, but it's a very similar scope and mission. However, and one of the cool things is that it ties directly into education. We have undergraduates who are able to engage in the research, and it's graduate students training, postdoctoral associates training. And there are a lot of things that go on through the Institute. For example, if any of you live in Houston and you've gone house shopping recently, Buyers Aware is a product, a data product produced by the Institute for Disaster Resilient Texas. This is a real-time map that shows which neighborhoods have flooded recently or are prone to flooding, based on so that if you're purchasing a home in a neighborhood, you know exactly which neighborhoods are prone to flooding and which aren't. In addition, this group is collaborating across the nation to actually build out simulations to train the large language AI models. And it seems crazy, because it feels like we have a 100-year storm every other week nowadays, but it turns out there aren't enough of these big storm events to fully train out these models. So they're actually simulating storms to feed into the models. It reminds me of synthetic seismic, actually, the way they're synthesizing storms to feed into the model. So it's fascinating. So you can see, just in this one anecdote, all the different dimensions of STEM and social science that are required to train the next generation of resilient and hazard literate workforce.
Hazard literate, let's hold that. That's a great phrase.
And then I'll just hit on one more thing, which is the broader types of professional development and skills we're trying to weave into our curriculum. The idea of building entrepreneurs, and how we teach people to be entrepreneurial, not just in the sense of starting up businesses, but entrepreneurial in the sense of translating or transposing their skills to solving different problems, or finding ways to reinvent themselves as the world continues to change. And then, of course, critical thinking is imperative, and the ability to connect interdisciplinary dots. And these are things we weave into our curriculum and professional development.
Well, thank you. That was a great answer. And what I'm going to do is now, since you brought up a great example of a product that is a direct, result of this type of work, I'm going to ask each of you to maybe think about an example, something, a technology. It could be a new business, a new venture that maybe has come out of the Marine Research Hub, or that you've had maybe talked with the founder on your podcast, where you think the issue of coastal resiliency is not only part of what could literally be addressed or solved. But, and I think this is a critical part of the business side of it, there's a sense of novelty. There's a sense of market differentiation. There's a sense of filling a specific zone of need. And that zone of need, you perfectly illustrated it in that, we're buying houses differently, right? If we live on the coast, and we're making tough choices about, can I get insured? Can I not get insured, right? So there's these different zones of needs. So if there are any examples you can maybe share out of the hub or out of your interviews that stand out, that'd be great to hear.
All right, well, I'll start really first, I guess. So when we think about coastal resiliency, and we kind of mentioned, the innovation and the novelty a little bit, there's a lot of solutions out there. Mm-hmm. And when people are looking, especially in South Florida, and they're like, oh, we want something that's not traditional, like we've been doing the seawalls the same way. Mm-hmm. And now you have new companies that are coming out of it. Kahn Design was one of the first cohorts out of Seaworthy Collective, was one of the finalists at Ocean Exchange, and now they're deploying in Miami, doing and at Fort Lauderdale, and that's just one solution that's out there. Then you have other companies doing smart seawall technology. You've got offshore with OnePrint doing sea hives, doing that gray-green infrastructure, and all of these solutions are starting to rise to the surface, like rising tide lifts all ships. And you would think that they would be competitive. Sometimes people think that, but I actually had a number of them all on one call together and trying to figure out how we could actually use a site and demonstrate all of them so that it could get out into the community so that people will see that these are solutions that are out there. And I've noticed that from working with these companies, I'll introduce them to somebody, and then if it doesn't work, their solution, they refer them to one of the other companies because they would rather have that than one of the traditionals win out. They want that innovation, they want that solution out there. And back to the point that not everything fits all, and that's where the science comes in. Like, you have to know what environment you're putting it in, and that solution, it needs to dissipate more waves, or it just needs to basically keep the water from going in. And so that differentiation and that science and that working together, as well, is, I think, one of the things that is setting apart this innovative ecosystem around solutions. And then back to what Debbie, you had said about the workforce and that interdisciplinary piece. I think a lot of students who are coming out into the workforce now also want to work for companies like this, but they think I have to only have the technical skills, right, or they have to be a scientist or a marine person in order to do these jobs. But these are all businesses. They need that finance and marketing. They need the business expertise. They're going to need the HR as they scale up their businesses. And I think that's an opportunity as well for us to showcase to students and even people who are changing careers that you need all of these skills and all of these jobs. And to deploy things in the water, you're going to need the boats and the captains and the pilots and the engineers and all the marine industry places as well. So I'm sorry, I think I went a little off the rails there.
No, that's fantastic. No, it's great. It's great. Thank you for that.
No, it's certainly, hearing about your program, I just keep wishing, I wish that was there when I went to school, because I found my way here, but it was a circuitous path, But, okay, to take it back to the companies, I have a whole lot of examples, so I got to try and pick one. You mentioned Kahn Design. We have a company that's tackling the erosion problem, like Florida sand is being carried away. I mean, they ship in sand in Fort Lauderdale, something I heard from an Uber driver, and then learned from this founder. So they've got, it's called ShoreLock, and they've got a technology to try and keep the sand in place. And I mean, that also requires data to know what's shifting and where's most likely to shift. So brings it back to the data piece. But there's countless examples of people that recognize something that maybe just affected it. Like I said, they're in coastal spot that they're in, and then they look into it a little further and find out, there's a bigger need for this everywhere. So.
Well, I appreciate that we put that too, because I was thinking, well, what I'm hearing is the challenges of coastal resiliency are hyperlocal. The solutions require lots of different solutions, so a whole ecosystem. And what I'm also hearing is that maybe there's an essence of collaboration within this ecosystem and understanding that no one solution fits all, and so therefore promoting or advancing other members of a cohort from an accelerator or a hub is a way to kind of start to fill out those gaps. And it makes me think of scale a little differently. I'm not necessarily thinking about massive distribution here. I'm thinking now about networks. So why don't we talk a little bit about scale, and why don't we start with you in terms of scale and solutions in terms of building that workforce of the future in education. Let me ask a sort of a provocative question. How many students are getting into this space? How many people are looking into this as an education opportunity? Are there enough?
No, not enough.
Okay.
No, and this is my my renewed sense of purpose is to make this nation aware of the careers and rewarding opportunities to have a life of impact in coastal, marine, and maritime disciplines. I born and raised in the Midwest, and somehow I knew at age 10 I wanted to be a marine scientist. I know there are thousands of kids out there who have this passion but don't even know what they can do with it. And so I think, it's organizers like Millie bringing us all together, like the network. When you said the network, I'm like, this is Millie. Millie's scaling us. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So let's get some questions.
Yeah.
And open it up.
All right.
Let's do
So
that.
who's got questions?
Right up here. Oh, there
Two
we
over
go.
here.
Got some.
I feel like I've got my night vision. I can finally see you. It's bizarre.
Didn't feel it's bright
Hi.
earlier.
My name's Gabrielle. I'm over
Oh,
here.
she's over there. She's there.
Yeah. I'm a high school teacher, and I do base my curriculum off of the UN Sustainability Goals, which, yes, we love. And my students get very interested in all of the goals and always kind of say, what can we do? And things like that. And I'm like, well, it's your future. You are going to study these things or do these. And so to your point that I don't have a lot of businesses that are doing these types of things or a network to kind of look at and say, hey, I know that we have lots of girls going to A&M. I teach at an all-girls school. But it's not, they want to be doctors or lawyers, but it's not always aligned with things that are super important, right? The UN goals, right? So what would your suggestions be for me in this kind of place where I have students that can get interested? I just don't have a ton of resources. And I write my own curriculum, so it's it's difficult. Yeah.
You have, I'll start, and then I know Debbie will want to go in, because I feel you there.
Yeah.
I created curriculum myself when I was at the middle school level, and it's about exposure. You just got to show them what's out there right now. And if you go on to the Marine Research Hub website, we're really just profiling the companies that are there, helping our startups to get a little bit more visibility for potential, connections, investment, all of those things. But it's also inspiring. I've spoken at a number of schools where I don't talk about my career, I talk about the companies that I'm working with, and it inspires them to see that opportunity. And I know I work with the Guy Harvey Foundation, which Greg's sitting here in the front. They have a great marine curriculum, and we're building out and working on some career curriculum that goes along in line with this. I'm just threw Greg under the bus saying, we've just started talking about it. We've been talking about it a while. But I think it's the exposure. Kids, they don't know what they don't know. And you just have to kind of give them those tools and explore, and maybe have them share it, and then look at connecting with Debbie and coming in, doing virtual. Always happy to do virtual, probably. So Debbie, I'll let you continue.
Oh, you hit all the right notes. I will say K through 12 educators are my heroes. And I know your time and energy is finite, so this is not this should not be your burden. So one of the things we all are trying to do better is contribute to informal education as part of bringing the awareness along, so that we now have students aware of and interested in pursuing these career paths. Thank you for what you do.
Yes, and reach out. I'll be happy to give you my card or website and connect you.
And I do hope you're also well, we should talk about some of the curriculum resources that NOAA has as well
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
There's quite a bit.
I want to throw in there just because I have a podcast that I speak to founders of ocean tech companies, and it's my favorite thing to do because you hear about their path and what inspired them, what was sort of their gravity assist moment that sent them in the direction that they went, and how they found it and how they found the people they needed to make it happen. And I think those kind of stories are pretty inspiring. And again, as Katie said, they don't know that these are out there. I know when I got into the marine space, pretty much everyone I worked with was there because somebody in their family was there. So they knew about it that way. So, yeah.
Is that a weather
hopefully-
alert going off?
I don't know, it must be.
Oh, geez.
Amber
Sorry.
alert.
Tornado alert.
Yeah, no,
We had another question down here in front,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, thanks for being here. I think there is something that we can all think about, even though I think there's a weather alert going on, maybe. Amber alert.
Amber
Okay.
alert.
Yeah.
Okay.
That could be anywhere in Texas. The land pollution that ends up in the oceans is greatly impacting coral reefs, and a lot of us are not aware that the sewage is not being treated very well before it ends up in the oceans. And so I think we all need to be asking everyone who's doing anything about sewage, what's going on, and is it getting better, and what do we got to do to fix that? Because the coral is protecting the shorelines. And the coral is being oversaturated with nutrients from farming, but also from our own,
Yeah.
Yep.
poop. So that's one thing that we can do. Everybody can do that. Anyone who's near the coast, anyway, can help change that. And that is something that's important that we don't really think about. I work with Tom Garreau with Global Coral. I don't know if anybody knows him. He does BioRock, which is an electrolysis coral reef restoration. So that's how I got into this, and he taught me that little known fact I did not know.
I want to tell you, I almost chose this other company to talk about that. She does like water cleaning she has floating gardens, basically the root system or cleaning, but that, it was a more inland technology that she started thinking, oh, this could be really good for the coasts and for mangrove forests and things. So we do talk to people that are solving a problem maybe inland, and it can be
Yeah,
applied.
there's a lot of nutrients that are ending up in the ocean,
Sure.
and we are contributing to that. And we could solve that a lot faster than we have been. I think there's a great deal of ignorance about this that we could solve that.
Well, there are some, to Tamara's point, the Phytoflora is the company that's doing that work, and they're doing some great stuff, but also looking at, oyster beds, and there was a company that came through Ocean Exchange called Water Warriors that actually has pellets that will absorb phosphorus on contact. And so I think you're right, though. We have to just start elevating these, and that's our goal, is to get these solutions out there and get them in the water. And don't discount the fact that, a lot of our dead zones and things come from all the inland rivers and streams that lead to the ocean. So educating not only the coastal environments, but also the Midwest area, which is where I grew up as well. So
We
and
find
still
each other. We do.
still became a marine biologist somehow from the Midwest. But yeah, your point is that these solutions, we have to build this network, and we need the community to start supporting these and investing in them so that we can deploy them more quickly.
And there's one technology that's actually becoming very popular, which is the composting toilet, which is being permitted in many places now. It's been a long fight to get that done. And that stops the waste before it ends up in the water treatment center, which really doesn't treat it all the way. And it ends up being land, it's usable fertilizer that can be used on land, especially for places that do not have septic or water treatment systems. These can be implemented, and they've been implemented with permitting, it's perfectly safe, but you have to do your homework on that.
Who knew we'd
Thank
be
you.
talking about poop up here?
I know.
Well, thank you so much.
solutions.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
great panel.
Thank you.
And Joel, thank you so much. It was great.